It's going to be a really strange presentation. I blame IT. Oh, she won't even advance. Yep, that's not working. Well, I would like to use it. I don't know why it's doing that. I might need you to do the inters. It doesn't seem to. You know, always the thing on in there. There's too many animations. You're not going to know. You say next, next, next. The receiver's someone else. It's gone. I'm going to use this and I'm going to use that. And it's the best.
Good evening, all. It is just about 6:30, and call our Committee of the Whole meeting for Monday, September 25th to order. We have some riveting information on the Transportation Asset Management Plan. I'm picking on Travis, so I think Travis is going to get us kick-started, and actually there's a lot of relevant detail in here for us to consider. And then we'll also, time permitting here on our Committee of the Whole, talk about the traffic control order if we get to that point.
All right. Is this on? Can you hear me? I think so.
Can't hear you.
It's a little louder than last time I was here.
By the way, thank our IT director, Jason, for making sure that that is up to snuff. So, floor is yours.
Oh, thank you. So first off, I have to apologize. We're having a few technical issues, so I'm going to do the best I can with this mouse. We seem to be missing a receiver for the slide advancer, and there's a lot of animations in this presentation. So this evening we are here to talk about the City of Walker's 2023 Transportation Asset Management Plan. We actually gave this same presentation about this same plan to you 3 years ago. So this is a state requirement from the Transportation Asset Management Council. We were required to pass the plan in 2020, and we were required to update it every 3 years. So this plan has the same format and structure as the original 2020 plan. We just have updated data in it. So with that being said, instead of having to read through the plan, we'll just walk you through a presentation here, hopefully. So what is transportation asset management? And I have to apologize, half of you probably heard this before, and half of you, this might be new. So transportation asset management is just managing your transportation assets. So the picture in the bottom left corner there is how we used to do transportation asset management going back to the earliest days of the city that we could find, index cards. So it just says, for this road, this is how it was built, and this is how we've maintained it throughout the years. There's notes and pen on the bottom corner, and it's in the DPW front office and a little metal bin, and it's still a decent amount of like historical data in there. So around the time I was hired by the city in 2006, the Transportation Asset Management Council was formed. And this is a state agency that was helping out mostly road commissions and some larger cities to get their arms around asset management as it relates to transportation. So this slide is from when we talked to the city commission in 2007. It's really old. It's before I had my professional engineer's license. It's back when Gary was the deputy director. And so it's just to kind of highlight that after we went to some trainings from the Transportation Asset Management Council, we came back in 2007 with some tools that we have, some of them we still use to this day. And so that's a presentation we did back then. And then in 2018, this Public Act 325, I think it is, was passed, and that kind of formalized the need for a formal written transportation asset management plan. So it's something that's been evolving over the decades. At the heart of it, transportation asset management is all about the right fix on the right road at the right time. In keeping with that thought of three, this is actually an image from the 2007 presentation that we gave that talked about, I think this is Scott's three-legged stool. It talks about, for asset management for transportation, there's kind of three considerations. There's political considerations and what we're hearing from the residents. There's the technical data, which is really the world that I live in. And then there's the experience, which is what is DPW seeing out there in the street. And so we kind of have to balance all three of those as we move forward in transportation asset management. So Public Act 325 of 2018, that's why we're here today. That's the act that requires the plan. What does it require? It requires a plan that has 8 parts. It should be noted that trails are not part of it. It's just the way the state law is written. I will go through each one of these 8 parts and further slides here. But the plan kind of breaks out into roads and bridges, pavement and bridges. And for those, you need to have 5 components. You have to know what you have with your inventory. You have to do some inspections to get condition data. You have to set a goal for where you want to be. You have to have a strategy to meet that goal, and then you got to go out and measure it and see how you're performing against your goal. So so it's really focused on roads and bridges, the meat of it. The next thing is, because it's geared towards a lot of road commissions, they say culverts, we say stormwater. So stormwater and traffic signals. For those, you only need 3 of those 5 components. You just need to know what you have a goal, and have a strategy to achieve that goal. Then we get into the sections 5, 6, and 7, which are like the others. 5 is literally a cut and paste from the Michigan Local Transportation Assistance Program out of Michigan Tech. Provided a draft document for this plan. So it has a bunch of financial definitions in it. Section 6 talks about what are our critical assets? If they were to fail, where would we be in a world of hurt if that happened? And then 7 is making sure that we're coordinating with other entities, which we are doing, and we document that in the plan. And then step 8 is the proof of acceptance. So it's actually a 2-step process. We will need the last page of the plan signed by the mayor, and then the entire city commission to pass the resolution. And so, just to highlight again, this plan was required to be submitted to the Transportation Asset Management Council back in 2020, and it's required to be updated every 3 years. So it's the same plan from 2020, just with some updated data in it. So to get into these sections in a little bit more detail, for pavement, for both our inventory and strategies kind of wrapped up in what we call, in this document, we call it the budget decision tool. We learned about this way back in 2006, 2007, and we've been using it. And this document's kind of got 4 steps to it. The first step identifies, so once again, this is just for roads. It identifies the inventory. So how many miles of major road do we have? How many miles of local road do we have? But not just center line miles, how many lane miles do we have? So a 4-lane road has more lane miles than a 2-lane road. So we do that math there, and we come to a grand total of 283.5 lane miles. Kind of gives us a surface area that we're working with. So item 2 is just a concept to kind of wrap our brains around, is that every year, everything gets a year older, including the roads. So if we have 283.5 lane miles of road, every year they age 283.5 lane mile years. That's just something to kind of put in your back pocket as we work through item 3. And that's our maintenance and repair options. So we have our list of fixes that we use, how much life extension on average we feel that those fixes provide, a cost per lane mile. We input the numbers in blue, and this is just an example, just for this purpose, of how many lane miles we're fixing that year using that particular methodology. It does the math to figure out how many lane mile years gained you have, and then it does all of the cost calculations for you. So in this scenario, if we run through this mix of fixes in the blue numbers at a cost of nearly $2 million, we fix 286 lane mile years. Well, you'll notice that's just a hair above how much our system ages every year. And that's what item 4 does, is just kind of the balance. And so this is a tool for us to kind of get our arms around, like, how much is it gonna cost for us to break even on our roads to keep them in the same state that they're in today? Or how much is it gonna cost if we want to improve the system, or if we wanna let it age a little bit also? Something to note is, I think when I was here 3 years ago, when I was running the cost analysis on kind of a break-even point, we were around 1.25 million, and now we're nearly 2 million, and we have seen excessively high inflation in the construction industry over the last 3 years, largely due to all of the stimulus funds that have been pushed into it. So that is something to note, is that our costs are going up substantially. Back to the plan for pavement. We did the inventory and strategy. Now we got to measure our condition, or set the condition and measure it. And so this is just a Excel graph we've made of what we call our PASER ratings, which is a methodology for you ranking the roads on a scale of 1 to 10. We drive around, we calibrate our eyeballs according to certain standards. There's somebody from MDOT in a van, Metro Council, and a Walker rep. And we throw out numbers as we drive down the street based upon what we're seeing, cracks, rutting in the wheel path, etc. So the blue line is the major system, the green line is the local system, and you'll see that after initial drop off from 2007 to about 2010, we started to kind of flatline out there. So that's how we're doing that. Another way to look
Travis,
at—
could I ask you one question on that? The last slide.
can you hit the back arrow? Thank you. Yep.
You have federal aid and then you have non-federal. Do you mean federal and state in the federal part? Or
Yeah, so the way that we slice and dice roads a lot of different ways. So the federal aid system is very similar to the major system, but for PASER ratings, they call it federal aid and non-federal aid. And so it's not a state system, it's like the major roads in Walker, like a 3 mile, or Remembrance would be a federal aid system. whereas the smaller roads, the neighborhood streets would be the local system.
Okay.
So that's where that comes from. Yep, good question. Next, oh yeah, sorry, thank you. So looking at our pavement goal, so this is a lot of information on this graph. It's a pavement deterioration curve, and the main thing to notice is that it exponentially drops off, right? As the pavement gets in worse condition, it just gets worse quicker. So you'll see a line there right where it says Phaser 4, pavement condition poor. That's kind of the cutoff line between non-structural distress and structural distress. Once you get below Phaser 4, you get into the structure of the road, you get into a total rebuild. And that's what we want to avoid, because that's really costly, because it's not just the pavement, it's also the sand and gravel underneath that has to be replaced. However, it's definitely done from time to time. So our goal for the entire system, while we may reconstruct certain roads at key times because it's necessary, the goal for the entire system is to keep the entire system above this structural distress level, because that's where our costs really escalate. So goal is to keep the Phaser rating above 4. Now, 2007, we averaged a Phaser rating of 7 for the entire system. We go forward 15 years, and we're at 5.5. Okay, so we are sliding. We're doing the best we can with the funds we have to keep this moving forward. But I think this is kind of around where we were in 2020. We're kind of at this inflection point of we want to make sure that we don't go any further down the pavement deterioration curve, because it's just better use of our funds if we can avoid it. Okay. Put roads aside, because asset management is a very broad topic, and this is just scratching the surface. So I've got to move on to bridges here. Bridges, there are a lot of bridges in Walker. You're only going to see 7 of them listed up there, because there's a technical definition of what makes a bridge, and then there are other bridges that we don't have jurisdiction over. And some of those we keep an eye on, and some of those we partner with funding, but there are 7 that we are 100% responsible for under our jurisdiction. And those are the 7 that we really focus on when we're out doing our bridge inspections every other year. And when we do our bridge inspections every other year, we get this National Bridge Inventory Standards rating. And you'll see different numbers there. Once again, it's on I think this is on a 1 to 9 basis. We want to stay above 4, because that's once you get into like a bridge replacement project, when we get too old. We do have one bridge that's out of 5. I do want to point out that's the Bristol Avenue Bridge over Indian Mill Creek down by West Catholic. That bridge is, 93 years old at this point. So it's actually doing really well. We've put a decent amount we've put some money in it a few years back. And it's at a really solid 5. A lot of times I go out there, we do the bridge inspections with the road commission, and I'll argue them saying it should be a 6, but there'll be one component. So like we'll be rating maybe 15 components of the bridge, and the overall rating gets the worst components rating. So that's where we're at with our bridges, with the goal being to keep the number above 4. We like to highlight in the plan some of our recent bridge projects. In the last 3 years, we have done a lot of this saline coating and epoxy coating, which is almost like painting clear coat on the concrete of the bridge. And the reason we're doing that is because there was some really bad sand in Michigan that had a bad alkali-silica reaction with the cement and the concrete, and it's kind of created like a cancer in the bridge. This is throughout the state. And so these coatings are done to kind of penetrate in there, seal it up, keep water from getting inside the cracks, and doing a freeze-thaw cycle with it. Another thing that you'll notice is that without totally clear-cutting everything, we are working with DPW to clear out some trees and brush to get more sunlight onto the sides of the bridges to once again kind of dry them out and keep that moisture content from infiltrating too far into the bridges. So we haven't done a lot of major bridge projects in the last 3 years, but in the plan we do highlight 2 gargantuan bridge projects we have coming up. Ironically, they're both on bridges that are not in our inventory, but we do highlight it. So we all know about in 2024, the railroad bridge over Bristol Avenue is being reconstructed and widened. We know that in 2025, we got the big project of the Fruit Ridge Bridge over I-96. So we like to highlight that in the plan just to show that there's a lot of city resources, time and funds that go towards bridges that are not technically in our inventory, but are still in our city and very important to our city.
Do we ever do these bridge inspections with like consultants where they spend more time looking at it, going through everything rather than just relying on the road commission and ourselves who aren't looking at bridges constantly?
Yeah, I just got audited by a consultant through the state, so yes, from that angle, we do. But we do our every other year bridge inspections with myself and Mike Tenbrock from the Kent County Road Commission. He has a ton of experience on this. Before partnering with Mike, we worked with Moore and Bruch Inc., and I would go out with Al Pennington, and we would go, that was way back when, and we would do bridge inspections. But yeah, this past, I don't know if it was last summer, or maybe the summer before that, we got audited, and passed very well, and it was by an MDOT consultant that does the auditing for us, so. Okay, item number 3, stormwater. This one does not require as much detail. It's really, with stormwater, there's a big emphasis on your inventory because these are pipes under the ground. And a lot of times, not only are they pipes under the ground, but they're also open channels that flow, they could be ditches, they could be very defined ditches, or they could be very gentle ditches that kind of flow through people's backyards. So getting your hands around your inventory of your stormwater system is very important. Luckily, back in 2017, we had a grant to do just that. And so we got a good inventory of our system. The stormwater information is uploaded into our GIS. A lot of the projects that kind of came out of this plan are in the capital improvement plan. This map here to the side highlights some projects from way back when all the way out till 2023. I'm sure there's going to be more coming from that. Our goal with the stormwater system is just to keep it operational, keep it repaired. Now that we know what we have and where it's at, it's a lot easier to do that. So that's kind of the highlight of the stormwater system. I don't want to take up too much time, so I'm trying to hurry up here. Traffic signals, there's a lot of traffic signals in Walker. I think the number's up to 36, and we only own 14 of those 100%. So as you can tell, we share a lot of traffic signals with MDOT and the Road Commission and a few with Grand Rapids. And typically they take jurisdiction over those intersections. With Grand Rapids, it's more about who owns more of the legs. But we have a nice inventory that outlines where all of our signals are and what percentage of each leg we own at each signal, and then some summaries down at the bottom. With traffic signals, we have put up a lot of different mast arm signals. I know in my career here at Walker, I think that's been a nice benefit both aesthetically and safety-wise. And there's, so that picture right there is Leonard and Kinney. And then of course, in about a week here, we're gonna start at Remembrancing Kinney. We'll have another new signal going in down there. So we like to highlight those kinds of projects and say that we're maintaining and upgrading our traffic signal system as we get the opportunity to do so. Financial resources, instead of reading you through all the boring definitions in the plan, which I tried to tone down to just a few pages, I thought I'd talk you through something that we do that's kind of a side to the plan, but it's still asset management. You'll hear a word Act 51 thrown around a lot, and it has there's a lot of different components to it, but let's kind of go from like we accept a new road in the system. A developer builds a road, they hand it over to the city. In the spring, we fill out this form on the left, and that lets the state know that we've got some new roads in our system because we want to get funding for those new roads, Act 51 funding to help maintain the roads and to help plow the snow on the roads. So we report it to the state. The state comes back to us in the summer, and they say yay or nay. They've always say yay. And then they give us our updated mileage for major and local roads. Then we come into the fall, and this is something I'll be working on for the rest of the week here, is I go on to the investment reporting tool, the IRT, and I work with DPW to get a list of all of our maintenance projects. So from our biggest engineering project that we're involved with to our smallest crack seal project, we input all of that data into the database. So the state has an inventory of what we did, and then I turn it over to Dan DeVries, and he inputs all the costs in a different system. And so these two systems talk to each other, and then the state can get their arms around how much maintenance fixes are costing for roads, and then they can produce reports and put out information to the public. At the end of the year, right before Christmas time, Scott gets to sign this report along with Dan DeVries, which is our Act 51 financial report, which just kind of puts a bow tie on all of this reporting. That's a quick and dirty overview of the financial side. Risk of failure analysis, that's section 6. So really what we're trying to do is ID our critical roads and bridges, to which the first thought is all bridges are critical, right? If a bridge goes out, it's usually a major detour. It's a major headache. We want to avoid that at all costs. We have done a great job of fixing that. Back in 2020, I believe we took down a bridge on Walker Avenue. It was Walker Avenue over the railroad. That was the worst bridge in our inventory. That was the one that posed the most jeopardy to us for failing. Didn't look like it as you drove over top of it, but when you got underneath it, it was safe to drive on, but it needed action. Getting rid of a bridge is great because now it can't fail. It's an at-grade crossing. But we highlight all of our bridges in the city, and we obviously put a special emphasis on the Fruit Ridge over I-96 bridge. We did that back in 2020. It still is a very important critical link. We highlight something that's called the National Highway System routes in Walker. This is, the federal government designates which roads are of the utmost importance to the United States as far as economics go and defense. And so a lot of those on that list make a lot of sense, like Wilson and Lake Michigan Drive and Alpine Avenue fit that criteria. There's the Wilson Avenue, 3 Mile Road, Fruit Ridge Bridge corridor that ties into the highway system. And then there's the Remembrance Road corridor. And I think that goes way back to some of the early world wars and being a quick escape route out of downtown Grand Rapids up towards the interstate system in north and west. Let's see here. Then the one we add to the list is the 3 Mile Road corridor, because that the entire stretch of 3 Mile Road, because that acts as the emergency route for when anything goes wrong on I-96. That's where traffic a lot of times gets routed to. So that's our critical roads and bridges, coordination with other entities. I want to highlight that we have public infrastructure and what we call private infrastructure. Public infrastructure are the stormwater, sanitary, and water main. With stormwater, obviously we maintain some systems, and the Drain Commission has other systems, and we work very close together with them. We work very close together with Grand Rapids on the water and sanitary sewer systems. And with traffic signals, Walker, Grand Rapids, and MDOT all work together. Grand Rapids actually maintains all of the Walker-owned traffic signals. We have really strong bonds with all of the public entities, no problem coordinating any of that kind of work. With the private infrastructure, I think Scott and I were just talking about this, it seems like we're losing some of our better contacts in the private infrastructure agencies. They've retired. There's a few good ones around. Andre Diaz at DTE is an excellent contact with us with Gas Main. And with electric, we work with Consumers Energy and sometimes ITC and METC. We have some contacts through there. It seems to be a little bit of a revolving door, and new contacts kind of coming all the time. When you get into phone, cable, telecom, especially when you get into telecom, you get into lots and lots of contacts. That's really, Jake does a lot of coordination with the telecom companies as they are installing fiber throughout the city. So we keep those lines of communication open, and then we highlight the railroads, mostly Coopersville and Marne Railroad that we work with, as a lot of these projects impact them, especially the bridge ones. Last thing, if I can wrap up here in time, is the proof of acceptance is the last section in it, and it's a 2-step process. It's the resolution tonight, and then signing the last page of the plan, which Deborah has a clean copy of. So if this all meets with your approval, I would ask that those 2 things be signed. And then this slide gets less and less funny every year that we bring it back up. But this is the last slide from our presentation in 2007, when we had more hair. And anyways, that's that. So I think we're close to 7 o'clock, so I can answer questions now, or if you want to wait until after that, we can do it then.
You answered my questions. Great report. Thank you.
No, thanks. Go back one.
Just super quickly, in the future, I'd love to see this come through the Mobility and Infrastructure Committee. I have some like more technical questions that I'd love to kind of
Yeah.
just riff through a little bit, but probably not here tonight.
Yeah, and we can certainly meet and talk about that at any time too. If you want to get on the agenda, we can do that. Because like I said, this is just a very high level overview. We
Yep.
can go way more into the weeds.
Yes.
Yes. Thank you.
If I would turn my mic on, let me redo that again for the viewing audience. It is now 7 o'clock. We'll call our Monday, September 25th, 2023 City Commission meeting to order, and I'd like to invite Commissioner DeShane to deliver the invocation as well as allegiance and pledge of allegiance. Commissioner?
Shall we pray? Heavenly Father, we come to you today with humility and faith. We thank you for all that you have given us and the many blessings in our life. We ask you for your guidance and strength and hope that you will show us the way and fill us with courage and wisdom. Help us to remember your love and grace and to be faithful in our service to you. Give us the patience and the understanding to face life's challenges with grace. Please watch over our firefighters, our police, our military, our community, and its residents. Help us also to take care of ourselves and to take care of others. We ask these things in your name. Amen.
And I'd like to invite everybody to stand and join us for Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Well, thank you all. If I could please ask our clerk to call the roll.
Mayor Carey,
Present.
Commissioner Gilbert,
Present.
Commissioner Babcock,
Present.
Commissioner Chase,
Present.
Commissioner DeShane,
Present.
Commissioner Burke.
Present.
All right, if I could ask for a motion and support for an excused absence for Commissioner Groder. She did let me know in advance, and I just did not get it put on the agenda, so that one's on me. Is there any
I'll make a
discussion?
motion.
Thank you,
I'll
Commissioner
support.
Chase.
I'll support.
Commissioner DeShane, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye, those opposed? Thank you all. Next is the approval of minutes from the September 11th, 2023 City Commission meeting. Is there any discussion on said minutes? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion for approval and support, please.
I'll make the motion.
Commissioner Babcock?
I'll support.
Commissioner DeShane. All those in favor, please say aye. 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 Those opposed? Thank you. Next is any public comment on agenda items only. None of you are rushing to the mic, are you? All right. Next on the list is the consent agenda. We have two items. First is the expenditures of $18,733,114.76. And the second is the traffic control order 275 for Fruit Ridge Avenue speed limit. I'm going to take a pause before I ask for a motion for approval on the consent agenda. Could I ask our city engineer on the traffic control order for the Fruit Ridge speed limit? Just a little bit of a background there. We didn't get a chance to touch on it at the 6:30.
Sure. MDOT has been holding a lot of meetings to talk about Fruit Ridge. We've been in part of those. Elena obviously has been there as well, and she can attest that we've had many, many, many discussions. One of those discussions was related to the speed limit, and MDOT did what's called a road safety audit, where they go out and they bring some folks from different regions in to give a corridor a fresh look. They did that here, came back with many positive comments. One of those was that the speed limit there of 50 miles an hour seemed a bit high for some of the conditions, which, you know, generally we agree with. But it was a great reason for us to go back and take another look and see what we could do there to try to bring that into line with what public perception really kind of wants that speed limit to be. And in doing that, Keith was very helpful in having the police department, I'm sorry, the road commission did a traffic count for us that included a speed study. And that's really the first step. And generally, you want to use the 85th percentile speed for a speed limit. We're allowed to go down to the 50th percentile, was generally kind of the average. That was 44 miles an hour out here. So that allowed us to give some engineering judgment to this issue, start to look at some of the details out there with geometrics and elevations and things, And then you've got a memo from me that kind of gets into some of those details. Talks a little bit about the railroad, how difficult that is on a 4-lane road when you talk about student drivers, buses, propane tanks, factory entrances. There's all kinds of reasons that we'd love to have that be a 5-lane road. And we'd also love to fix some of the vertical alignment issues out there, which is kind of the up and down of the road and the hills and valleys. So all of those things really play into it. It allows or provides for some hidden driveways. And I think the biggest thing out there is the presence of the new Amazon facility and all of the vehicles that we see platooning through here one after another to the new gas station, which has gained a lot of popularity in the last year. So when you put all that together, we felt comfortable that we could put together an engineering judgment or opinion that would justify the lower speed limit from 50 to 45. I think when we look at the design for the bridge, 45 still isn't where MDOT would like us to be, but it's the right number, and we're comfortable putting that number there. I think if we went any lower, and Keith can join in on this as well, but we're both a little bit uncomfortable even considering anything lower based on what the vehicles are driving out there. And then it gets a little uncomfortable for us to propose a speed limit that's lower than the 50th percentile because the way the state has mandated that we set speed limits really looks at that as the ground floor bare minimum that we can do. So with that, you have a traffic control order that we have both signed recommending that you go to 45 miles an hour.
Okay. Commissioners, any questions? I do have one I'll finish up with. I'm gonna come to the left. Commissioner DeShane, I saw your hand up first.
Oh, yeah, well, curious, what did MDOT want the mile per hour, or the speed limit to be?
Well, I think if you take a specific engineer's job, you know, a lot of folks have a very kind of blinders on approach, like maybe they're just a bridge engineer or they're just a geometrics engineer looking at site distances and things. They would like that to be lower, but I think in its totality, if you look at it, we have to be kind of careful about that too because of the fact that some drivers are going to drive what they feel comfortable on the road, not what you tell them to drive on the road. So you don't want to have one person who's comfortable at 55 and then one person who's told to drive 35. That creates a huge difference between the two and creates an unsafe situation. So in general, we want those to be as close together as possible.
There's
So-
like different criteria that the bridge engineers have to have, like this bridge be within based on the speed limit. So
Okay.
what the speed limit gets set by now allows us to work on it going forward with what the bridge has to meet their criteria at.
So as a pure bridge designer, we might like that to be a 30 or 35 mile an hour road because you have a lot more freedom with the design. But from a practical standpoint, we don't need a Dukes of Hazzard adventure out here where, you know, people are driving 55 miles an hour over a peak in the road that's too sharp.
Gotcha.
We've had some intense accidents over the years, particularly by a couple of the businesses there over time, so that definitely seems to make sense. Commissioner Burke, I saw your hand.
What's the speed limit on the bridge itself?
We have set a policy with the city, I'm gonna meander from your question, sorry, to look at speed limits in segments, logical segments. So we don't have it necessarily just on the bridge. We've looked from 3 mile to 4 mile road and set one speed limit that's consistent along that corridor, which today is 50 miles an hour.
Okay, so I'm good with 45. But we might have to reattack this in a few years when we redo the bridge, right?
It's possible, but again, as a commission, we've decided to try to be as consistent as we can over 1 mile segments. Now, if we come back and revisit this and say, Fruit Ridge is not uniform anymore, the south half is very, very different than the north half, then we could probably look and say, well, one speed limit would apply on the south portion and one might apply on the north portion.
Yeah, and we can get to that bridge when we come to it.
Right.
But yeah, it is a unique stretch. I mean, it is a very unique stretch, because I certainly feel 50, I'm comfortable on the top end of that. I'm not at all as I come to the bridge, so.
Right.
Yeah.
Correct.
We have a lot of school kids going that way towards the high school.
Anything else to my left? Good, commissioners? I think the only question, Scott, notification. You know, I appreciate the proactive approach we take with our police department about more education with people if we do stop them. Are there gonna be, as those signs change, will there be flags out for a short period of time with that change, maybe just alert to the drivers that it is dropped down to 45?
Sure, absolutely.
Okay, maybe a 30-day window or 2-week window, whatever you deem appropriate.
And it may even be longer than that, because sometimes the flag might stay up as long as it's still orange.
True,
So we'll
this is true
see.
until that fades, all right, fair enough. Any other commissioners, any other questions? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion for approval and support for the consent agenda item, the expenditures in the amount of $18,733,114.76, and the traffic control order 275 that we just discussed for the Fruit Ridge Avenue speed limit, lowering it from 50 to 45 between 3 Mile and 4 Mile Road.
I'll make a motion.
Commissioner Chase? Support. Commissioner Burke. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed? Good. Thank you to our city engineer. Before I bring up resolution or motion to move forward, Travis did a great presentation, by the way, very in-depth, very informative, and continue to learn about roads each time that he's up there presenting. Is there any other dialogue that, questions that have come up with Travis, the presentation, background on this?
Just one, I mean, nobody's more fascinated with stormwater than the assistant city manager, but I'm pretty fascinated with drainage too. But we just did it recently, so I don't feel the need to go into a lot of detail on doing it. But as years go forward, I will be interested in that process for making sure, because we have some key areas we've got to be concerned about, obviously. We want to make sure we're on top of those. And I was at a drone summit in Denver a few months ago, and the drones that can drop in drainage now and go off and inspect things, pretty spectacular. So as we go forward, we might want to consider some of those things, because I'm not looking to and dying to find problems in our drainage systems, but they don't get better over time. So no question, but that's just on my mind. Thanks.
I think the last thing I'll leave before I bring up the resolution, just observation from my perspective. We seem to have more of a process in updating the asset management plan on an ongoing basis, and then that finalization come the 3-year time frame. It's not an event where we're like, oh boy, we need all this stuff now. You guys do a great job keeping on top of it through the years and just updating periodically between you and Public Works. So appreciate that, and very informative. So see no other discussion, entertain a motion for approval and support, please, on the transportation asset management plan adoption.
Motion for approval?
Commissioner Gilbert?
I'll support.
Commissioner Chase. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed? Resolution 23-683 is adopted. Thank you. Gentlemen, you're welcome to stay. Riveting a few last minutes here. All right, other public comment? Seeing none. Chief, just stay seated. Don't need you up there. Commissioner City Manager comments. I will start, Madam Clerk.
All right, thank you. So the special election is coming up November 7th. We've received quite a few of the applications back. It's important to note on those, with the passing of Proposal 22-2, we now have a permanent ballot list, which means voters can choose to be on that, and they will just receive a ballot opposed to an application. So majority of our apps coming back, people are selecting to be on that list. So that's great. The state is unsure at this point if or when the permanent application list will go away. We're just as confused because those sound very similar, but two separate lists, so an application list and a permit list. The ballots are available in the clerk's office currently. Those that have requested them, they'll be mailed out this week. And then the second thing would be based on our population and number of registered voters, Walker is required to have 2 ballot boxes, and they are required to be for election materials only. So you'll notice a new box in front of City Hall, and then there's a second box at Fire Station on 3 Mile, Fire Station number 3.
Thank you. Commissioner Gilbert?
For me, just a brief touch on the zoning ordinance subcommittee's work and the planning commission meeting we held last week. For everyone's awareness, that process is ongoing, and I think as a part of some of the action we've taken on this commission, you can expect some expedited and very involved participation in those processes moving forward. Processes being the zoning ordinance rewrite and some of the key changes that we're making there that we hope will help planning and development efforts in the city, as well as the master plan process and revisiting the work that we did just a couple of years ago to make sure that we're providing greater context, further detail in what is in the master plan. So expect those to move forward quickly over the next 6 months, 7 months, and I think that we will also see some other ordinance activity come through from Planning Commission to this board.
I think a follow-up for that is we're gonna try to have a combined meeting with everyone so that we can go through what we did in November, I believe.
I believe it is November, yep.
Solid.
We scheduled like 5 meetings that night.
It's gonna be a busy calendar for us, for Planning Commission, for that subcommittee, so look forward to seeing a lot of each other.
Develop the strategy, refine it, and execute on it. Beautiful. Commissioner Babcock.
I got to attend my first biannual local unit quadrant meeting on the 13th with Daryl, and it was very informative. I highly recommend it if you haven't been to one yet. One thing I meant to share with Nicole, possibly to share on Facebook, is the health department, Kent County Health Department has the Get Ahead of Lead program, where some of our community members could be eligible for a lead pipe fitting to make sure that it doesn't get into your water system, so the filtration system. So I'll send that to her to share with some of our potentially eligible residents. And then shout out to the Parks and Rec Department for the kickball tournament. I attended that for a few of the games, and it was very well attended. They raised a lot of food for the veterans, and hopefully next year will be even bigger. So thanks to them.
Good stuff. Thank you. Commissioner Chase.
We had community engagement the first week of September, and we welcomed the Parks and Rec Committee to that. Looking forward to the continued work that we're going to be doing on that. Had ordinance zoning subcommittee, as Commissioner Gilbert mentioned, and then looking forward to Pumpkin Bash this Saturday.
Awesome. Thank you. Commissioner DeShane.
Yeah, I just want to do a shout out to Chief Mankel for helping me to resolve or I guess identify a noise complaint that we had for Bristol residents. And then also I want to put some recognition out and praise to the police, fire, and DPW departments for their help and assistance with the construction accident that occurred last week. We're very fortunate to have competent and people that make sure that our residents are taken care of when needed. And then unfortunately, I do not believe I'm going to be able to attend the big Pumpkin Festival event, and I'm kind of sad about it because I've never missed one yet, but so it goes.
I think Commissioner Burke just called dibs on your donuts and apple cider.
I'm eagerly writing down Pumpkin Bash. I forgot I'm bashing pumpkins this weekend. I appreciate Commissioner Gilbert's comments, Commissioner Chase's comments on the zoning and the ordinance rewrite and the whole process we're going through. Remember from a couple weeks ago, we put a pause on things, and we had some, I think, very solid reasons long in the works to do so. Cranes wrote a couple articles about it. I got my copies of Cranes Grand Rapids the other day, and it's got in here leaders in commercial real estate, and it's got 25 different leaders in real estate, some of whom we know here in Walker. It also came with this Excellence in Construction pamphlet with 90 different projects in West Michigan that all got awarded Excellence in Construction for quality or innovation. None of them are in Walker. So part of what we're looking to do here in this master plan, this rezoning process, to get some of those projects here in our city, get some dynamic things in our city, get some creativity in our city. Hopefully the library will be one of those things in a few years. So that's what we're on about, is trying to find a way to get that right synergism, if you will, in the right parts of our city, to revitalize DDA, to keep Alpine vibrant. I'm honestly thrilled at how the Chick-fil-A has gone on Alpine. I'm shocked at how little traffic impact it seems to have had so far. So those kinds of forward-thinking ways to grow the city in reasonable ways, in the right ways, is what we're on about, and I appreciate all the effort there.
Well said. Assistant City Manager.
Just 2 quick items for you folks. Number one, Daryl will be back tomorrow. He's been at the ICMA conference. And then the other item is your financial audit is underway. The auditors were here last week. So that process will come together, and they'll probably do their presentation hopefully in November. I think last year was December, but they were a little bit late last year. So it's underway, and we don't expect any problems, but we'll have that come together here and get the reports to you and go from there. Thank you.
Thank you. The only other thing I have not covered, have been traveling a bit for business, but did attend the annual POW MIA Day at the Veterans Home. If you've not had a chance to see the new additions and buildings there, it's just absolutely gorgeous and well overdue for our veterans there, and just neat to see. So good day and a solemn observation of what we were recognizing. So that being said, if there's nothing else for the good of the order, I'll entertain a motion for approval and support, or to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Commissioner Burke? Commissioner Gilbert, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed? We're adjourned, thank you.